It was just past 1 in the morning on May 14, 1983, in Orange County, California. Officer Sterling and Sergeant Jaguar were on duty on the San Diego freeway when they spotted a brown Toyota Celica driving really weirdly. They went to pull the car over, and that's when they met him face to face. They didn't know it yet, but they were looking at the most wanted killer of the last 10 years. The man stood there, spilling beer on the ground and with his pants undone. He agreed to take a breathalyzer test, which he obviously failed. As they were about to arrest him for drunk driving, they felt something wasn't right, like they were missing something big. Sergeant Jaguar checked the car and found something that would haunt him forever. A young guy in the passenger seat, lifeless. This was the scene that the killer hadn't recorded in his secret list, which had more than 67 victims on it, victims who had faced unimaginable horrors. Randy Kraft was born on March 19, 1945, in Long Beach, California. He was the fourth kid and only the son of Opal Lee and Harold Herbert Kraft. Kraft's father had moved to California from Wyoming weeks after the American entry into World War II. Upon finding employment as a production operative at Douglas Aircraft Company, he was joined by his wife and 3 daughters. The Kraft family lived modestly, and Kraft's mother took several jobs to supplement her husband's assembly line salary. Kraft's mother took several jobs to supplement her husband's assembly line salary. Kraft's mother initially found employment as a seamstress in a Westminster garment factory before later obtaining employment as a cook in a local school. Nonetheless, Opal Kraft always found time for her children. In 1948, the Krafts moved to Westminster, Orange County. Kraft attended Midway City Elementary School, where his mother was a member of the PTA. As a student, his intelligence was noted by classmates and teachers. By 1957, Kraft was judged intelligent enough to attend accelerated classes at 17th Street Junior High School. After finishing high school in 1963, he went to Claremont Men's College in the small town of Claremont. Randy was into a lot of things there. He joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps and got really into politics. In 1964, he even supported the Vietnam War publicly and helped campaign for Barry Goldwater, the Republican presidential candidate. Randy also worked at a local gay bar and was so busy that he started taking Valium to help with his stomach and headaches. However, over time, his friends got worried about how much medicine he was using. His grades started to drop. He began drinking, played poker all night, and even failed his econometrics class, which delayed his graduation by 8 months. 1968 was a big year for Randy. He got his economics degree and shifted his political views from right-wing to more democratic, even working hard for Robert Kennedy. That same year, he joined the U.S. Air Force, aced the tests, and showed he was really smart with an IQ of 129. He got sent to Edwards Air Force Base in Kern County, California, a place with high security. But in 1969, Randy's life changed dramatically when he told his family and friends he was gay. They accepted him, but the military didn't, and he was forced to leave. Feeling down, Randy went back to bartending and later became a truck driver in Huntington Beach. He also started teaching courses at California State University, Long Beach. There, he met Jeff Graves, a younger guy from Minnesota. They started dating, and it looked like Randy was getting his life back on track. But he had a dark secret. In March 1970, while wandering around Huntington Beach, Randy met 13-year-old Joseph Alvin Fancher, who had run away from home. Randy invited him to live together, which seemed nice, but he had evil intentions. After bringing Joseph to his apartment, Randy drugged and attacked him. Joseph managed to escape while Randy was at work, and a passerby saw Joseph's bad state and called for help. Joseph was taken to the hospital, where he told the police about being drugged and beaten by Randy, but he didn't mention the abuse. The police went to Randy's apartment without a warrant, and fearing for their jobs, they decided not to press charges, leaving Randy free to offend again. By the end of 1971, the police found an unidentified, decomposed body on Ortega Highway. The victim was Wayne Joseph Duquette, a 30-year-old bartender. The autopsy indicated he died from alcohol poisoning on September 20th of that year. The investigation stalled, with no leads on Wayne's clothes, belongings, or his killer. On December 26, 1972, police on Highway 405 in Seal Beach found 20-year-old sailor Edward Daniel Moore's body. He was tied at the wrists and ankles, had a hit mark on his face, probably from a blunt instrument, bite marks, and shockingly, a sock stuffed in his rectum. It looked like he'd been thrown from a moving vehicle. 6 weeks later, on February 6th, police found a man's body, aged between 17 and 25, near the Terminal Island Freeway. He couldn't be identified, but like Edward Moore, he had a sock stuffed similarly. Police suspected the same killer was behind these crimes, but the culprit remained at large as more victims appeared. On April 9th, 17-year-old Kevin Clark Bailey was found beside a road in Huntington Beach. He had been castrated and sodomized. 13 days later, another dismembered body was found and given the name John Doe. On July 30th, 20-year-old Ronnie Jean Wiebe was found strangled, with marks suggesting he'd been restrained and hung before death. The year ended with another gruesome discovery on December 29th. 23-year-old art student Vincent Cruz Mestas was found dead in the San Bernardino Mountains. He was openly bisexual. As with several previous victims, one of the victim's socks had been forced into his rectum. Mestas's hands had been severed from his body and were never found. By November 1974, 5 more victims had been found beside or close to major roadways in Southern California, 3 of whom had been conclusively linked to the same killer. 2 of these victims, 20-year-old Malcolm Eugene Little and 19-year-old James Dale Reeves, had each been found beside a freeway with foreign objects inserted into their bodies, whereas the body of the 3rd victim, 18-year-old Marine Roger Edward Dickerson, bore evidence of bite marks much like several earlier victims. On January 3, 1975, Kraft abducted and murdered a 17-year-old high school student named John Liras. The youth was last seen boarding a bus in Long Beach. His strangled body was found the following day, discarded at Sunset Beach with a foreign object protruding from his anus. Drag marks along the beach close to where his body was found suggested that 2 individuals had carried Laras's body into the water. 2 weeks after this murder, on January 17th, the body of a 21-year-old named Craig Jonadis was found discarded in the parking lot of the Golden Sails Hotel near the Pacific Coast Highway and Loynes Drive in Long Beach. Jonadis had been strangled to death with a length of string, possibly a shoelace. By January 1975, a total of 14 victims, whose bodies had been found discarded across 4 separate counties over the previous 3 years, had been linked to the same killer. All the victims had been Caucasian males with similar physical characteristics. On March 29, 1975, Keith Crotwell and his friend Kent May left home to hitchhike south, unaware of the fate awaiting them. Kraft lured the two men from a Long Beach parking lot into his Ford Mustang. The youths were given beer and Valium as Kraft drove in a random, aimless manner around Belmont Shore and Seal Beach. The police started searching right away, and soon they got a tip from two young people. They said they saw Crotwell and May in a black and white Mustang speeding into a parking lot. The driver quickly leaned over, opened the passenger door, and pushed May out onto the ground. He was almost out of it, probably from drinking or drugs. They saw Crotwell slumped over the driver's shoulder before the car sped off into the night. A month later, they found Crotwell's head at a pier near Long Beach Harbor. The police scoured the city for clues to find the driver. They eventually got a name: Randy Kraft. On May 19th, he was questioned. He admitted picking up Crotwell but claimed he left him at a cafe and knew nothing more. He also said his car later crashed and he had to call a tow truck. Jeff, still his partner, backed up his story. The detectives didn't believe him, but the Los Angeles County prosecutors wouldn't charge him due to the lack of evidence and because they couldn't find the rest of Crotwell's body or determine how he died. So, Jeff was free again. After a cool-down period, his crime spree just got worse. On December 31st, he kidnapped 22-year-old Mark Hall, tied him to a tree in a canyon, abused him, cut off his private parts, stuffed them into his rectum, burned him with a lighter on the chest, nose, and cheeks, gouged out his eyes, and then attacked him with a broken bottle. As if that wasn't horrific enough, Kraft suffocated Mark by stuffing leaves and dirt into his throat. When the police found Mark's body, they were shocked, and the autopsy revealed he was alive for much of this ordeal. This led the police to profile the killer as highly intelligent, methodical, and organized, possibly with military background, noting the use of surgical tape on several victims' noses, a technique used in the military to prevent body decomposition after death. On January 24, 1976, investigators from different parts of Southern California gathered in Orange County to discuss how to proceed with the search. Meanwhile, Kraft was living a peaceful life. In the following months, he ended things with Jeff Graves and soon found new love in Jeff Seelig, a 19-year-old baker's apprentice. They moved to Laguna Hills, promised each other forever, and shared a passion for threesomes, often picking up people from highways for this. During this time, Kraft wasn't violent, and it seemed his relationship had quenched his thirst for blood. He went nearly a year without committing any crimes until he struck again on December 10th, killing 19-year-old Paul Joseph Fuchs. Though Fuchs's body was never found, his name was on Kraft's list of victims. Kraft lay low after that, but on April 16, 1978, he strangled Scott Michael Hughes after drugging him with Valium and removed one of his testicles. Hughes's body was found fully clothed except for his shoelaces. On June 11th, 23-year-old Roland Gerald Young was found near a San Diego highway, mutilated and stabbed, then thrown from a speeding vehicle. 8 days later, the body of Marine Richard Allen Keith was found in Moulton Parkway, showing signs of being tied up, with strangulation as the cause of death and alcohol in his system. Despite ongoing efforts, police couldn't pin down the killer or save the victims, including Keith Arthur Klingbeil, a 23-year-old found beside Interstate 5, strangled with his shoelaces. At the hospital, they discovered he had ingested large amounts of paracetamol and alcohol and had burn marks on his chest. He died shortly after. On September 29th, Richard Anthony Crosby, 20, was found dead under similar circumstances along Highway 71 in San Bernardino, having vanished the day before while hitchhiking. The California Strangler, as the media dubbed him, had the region in fear, with every officer on alert for the next crime. On November 12, 1978, trucker Michael Joseph Inderbeaton's body was found near the San Diego freeway, castrated like the others. In addition to having been castrated, Inderbeaton had been violated with a foreign object and had suffered burns similar to those inflicted on victim Mark Hall 2 years previously. The cause of death was listed as suffocation. Kraft's attacks became less frequent, with the next one occurring in July 1979 on a highway. Donnie Harold Crissell, a 20-year-old sailor, died from acute alcohol poisoning, with signs of being tied and tortured. 2 months later, parts of 21-year-old British tourist Keith Anthony Jackson were found in trash bags behind a Union 76 gas station in Long Beach. A sock was found inserted in his rectum. Only Jackson's head, torso, and left leg were ever found. 2 weeks later, on September 14th, the body of 19-year-old Gregory Wallace Jolly was found in Lake Arrowhead. Jolly had been emasculated, and his head and legs had been severed after death. His possessions were later found in Kraft's home. On February 18, 1980, 19-year-old Mark Allen Marsh's body was dumped near Templin Highway, last seen hitchhiking to Buena Park. That summer, Kraft's job took him to Oregon, where he stayed in Portland and claimed 2 more victims. Michael Sean O'Fallon, a recent college graduate hitchhiking across the country, fell prey to Kraft, who drugged and strangled him, his body found near Salem. The following day, Kraft is believed to have killed a man estimated to be aged between 35 and 45 years old, whose body was found beside a freeway in the city of Woodburn. Kraft forced him to swallow a toxic level of Valium and paracetamol before strangling him with a cord. In September, Kraft returned to California and resumed his crimes, this time involving Robert Loggins, with whom he took incriminating photos. These photographs, which were subsequently found in Kraft's possession, show Loggins in Kraft's living room slumped fully clothed on his sofa, apparently intoxicated, and in various nude, pornographic postures. All these pictures depict Loggins with his eyes closed. It is unknown whether the victim was alive or dead when they were taken. On April 10, 1981, he kidnapped Michael Cluck while hitchhiking, brutally killing him with 31 blows to the head after assaulting him, and dumped his body near Interstate 5 in Oregon. 4 months later, the partially clothed body of male prostitute Christopher Allen Williams was discovered in the San Bernardino Mountains. He had ingested several drugs, and a paper towel stuffed in his nostrils caused him to choke on his own mucus. By early 1982, the relationship between Kraft and Selig had become marred by frequent fights and episodes of temporary separation. In an effort to resolve their personal differences, the couple began attending weekly counseling sessions in Huntington Beach. These sessions began on June 22, 1982. Then, the brutality of the killings escalated. Raymond Davis, just 14, disappeared while looking for his dog in Echo Park. 12 days later, he was found decomposed under leaves, wrists tied and shoelace around his neck. Nearby, 16-year-old Robert Avila was found dead under similar circumstances. He had been strangled to death with a length of stereo speaker wire. Kraft is not known to have killed again until November 1, 1982, when he abducted and murdered a 24-year-old Modesto man named Arna Mikial Lane. Lane was last seen hitchhiking towards Orange County in search of work. His body was not found until January 1984, discarded on a hillside close to the town of Ramona. 4 weeks after Lane's murder, the semi-nude body of 26-year-old Brian Witcher was dumped from a moving vehicle alongside the Interstate 5 freeway, close to the city of Wilsonville, Oregon. Witcher had ingested high levels of both alcohol and Valium, but he died of asphyxiation. On December 3, 1982, 29-year-old Anthony Jose Silveira vanished while hitchhiking. 2 weeks later, his body was found, showing the same signs as previous victims. After this murder, Randy left on business, returning with Silveira's military jacket, ready for more victims. Before returning, he stopped in Michigan, staying at the Grand Rapids Hotel where he met Dennis Alt and Christopher Schoenborn. He drugged and assaulted them, then murdered Dennis by suffocation and Christopher by strangling him with a belt after inserting a pen into Christopher's urethra. Their bodies were found on December 9, 1982, in a field near the hotel. Kraft left Schoenborn's keys and Silveira's jacket in his room before fleeing. That month in Portland, he killed 19-year-old Lance Taggs by overdosing him with drugs and suffocating him with a sock in his windpipe. His body was discovered the following day, discarded alongside a rural road in Clackamas County, close to where the body of Witcher had been found just 2 weeks earlier. Eric Church, 21, last seen hitchhiking from Orange County to Sacramento, was found dead along Interstate 605, suffering similar tortures to Dennis and Christopher, but with signs of struggling against his restraints. He died from strangulation and severe head injuries. On February 12, 1983, Kraft killed 2 Buena Park men, 18-year-old Jeffrey Nelson and 20-year-old Roger Duvall. The 2 young men were last seen outside the house of a friend named Bryce Wilson shortly after midnight when they told Wilson they intended to purchase something to eat. Kraft continued these heinous acts, unaware that his luck was about to change dramatically. It was 1:10 a.m. on May 14, 1983, when Officer Sterling and Sergeant Howard spotted a brown Toyota Celica driving erratically on the San Diego Freeway in Orange County. They pulled it over and out stepped Randy Kraft, casually tossing a beer bottle onto the pavement. Officer Sterling noticed Kraft's pants were undone, which was really odd. He had Kraft do some sobriety tests, which he clearly failed, so they arrested him for drunk driving. Meanwhile, Sergeant Howard approached the Celica and observed a young man slumped with his eyes closed in the vehicle's passenger seat, partially covered by a jacket. Several empty Moosehead beer bottles and an open prescription bottle of lorazepam tablets were strewn around his feet. Howard attempted to wake the man. Receiving no response, Howard attempted to rouse the man by shaking his arm, only to note the individual had a low body temperature. Upon checking for a pulse, Howard noted the man was dead, with a ligature mark visible around his neck. Lifting the jacket from the victim's lap, Howard noted the victim's jeans had been opened to expose his genitalia. In addition, the victim's hands had been bound with a shoelace, and his wrists bore evidence of welt marks. Later identified as Terry Lee Gambrell, a 25-year-old Marine stationed at El Toro Air Base, the victim had been strangled to death. Searching the car, Howard also found lots of damning evidence: alcohol, tranquilizers, various prescriptions, and an envelope with over 47 eerie photos showing young men in explicit, lifeless poses. Plus, there was blood on the passenger seat, but it wasn't Gambrell's since he had no open wounds. Howard had a hunch they had caught the California Strangler. They took Kraft to the sheriff's department and searched his house, finding clothes and belongings of many young men whose bodies had been found over the years, along with more photos of unconscious or dead men. But the most shocking find was Kraft's coded list of 61 victims, including 4 double murders, totaling 65 young men. Gambrell was not on the list since his death led to Kraft's arrest. After matching the list with discovered bodies, the count reached 67, clearly indicating Kraft needed to face the harshest penalty. The California Strangler was charged with 15 murders between December 1972 and May 1983 after over 700 witnesses were interviewed and more than 250 pieces of evidence were presented. The trial began on September 26, 1988, where Kraft pleaded not guilty but was convicted and sentenced to death on November 29, 1989. Following a moratorium in California, his sentence was changed to life without parole. While his capture brought peace to the region, it left an unresolved question. Did he have an accomplice? Some details of Kraft's crime suggested he might not have acted alone. On one hand, forensic evidence in 2 cases revealed an extra set of fingerprints and DNA that didn't match the California Strangler. On the other, it seemed unlikely that Kraft could have moved bodies weighing up to 200 pounds alone, and it was even more suspicious that he kept them in his car for long periods without anyone noticing. Moreover, the photos Kraft had of the murdered men had to be developed somewhere over the years, yet no photo lab ever reported these images to the police. Initially, it was thought Kraft might have developed them himself, but he lacked a darkroom and the necessary skills. Suspicion fell on Jeff Graves, Kraft's ex-partner, but he died before the police could question him, leaving the mystery unsolved. However, a breakthrough seemed to come years later when Bob Jackson claimed to have the answers. After Dennis McDougal published his book Angel of Darkness about the California Strangler in 1991, Jackson contacted him, confessing to killing 2 hitchhikers with Kraft, one in Wyoming in 1975 and another in Colorado in 1976. However, authorities in both states said they couldn't verify these claims. Jackson insisted he knew more about Kraft, claiming Kraft's list only included the most memorable murders and that the real number of victims was closer to 100. McDougal reported this to the police and provided interview recordings. The detectives questioned Jackson but didn't believe him. No murder charges were filed against him, and he was eventually persuaded to check into a psychiatric hospital. Jackson gained some notoriety when his claims were published in a Beach magazine article in January 2000. Meanwhile, Kraft sued McDougal and the Angel of Darkness publisher, claiming the book tarnished his reputation, portrayed him as sick and insane, and hindered his future job prospects, demanding $62 million in damages. The lawsuit was dismissed as frivolous in June 1994, ending the fabrications of the California Strangler. Kraft is still in prison. Despite most of the bodies being found, 22 remain unlocated. The California Strangler shows no interest in aiding the investigation or expressing remorse for his actions. His sadistic crimes are as shocking as his ability to evade capture for a decade, instilling terror and leaving a bloody stain across California. That's the end of today's episode of Unreal True Crime. We've dived deep into the shadows of humanity's darkest deeds, but remember, the truth is often stranger and more chilling than fiction. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat in our exploration of the most bewildering criminal cases. Until next time, this is Unreal True Crime.